Hey guys, welcome back to Built, and it's time for another garage update. Alright guys, welcome back to the garage. I know it's been a few months since we had one of these like overarching, here's what's going on with each project video, so I figured it was due, and there are a few updates that I do want to go over. Now, first off, some of the videos that I normally release, whether it's the Miata or the Civic or any of my other project videos, I haven't released anything for a few weeks. I did have an issue with one of the SD cards that does house a lot of my recordings, and I did have to reformat it and I lost a lot of footage. So I'm gonna kind of go through and see what I still have and see what I can show and see what I can recreate. But unfortunately that did push back a lot of the videos that I have been working on. Hopefully I'll get something out soon. I do have some updates on each car. Ultimately, that's why I'm here. I hope that's why you're here too. And let's go ahead and get into some of those updates. Alright guys, well, if you've been following along with the channel, then you definitely know this Mazda Miata, as probably 4 of the last 5 videos that I've posted have had something to do with this Miata and or its interior. Now, this is a car that I own with my wife, and we do work on it together, so 98% of the work that gets done, we're both in the garage, we're both involved, we're both doing something regarding how it gets done. So I don't really work on it very often by myself. Unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, we did have the issue with the SD card, and this particular project was a victim of a lot of that loss. So a lot of that footage was some of the changes that we were making with this car, some of the updates. I was hoping to have a video done within the next week or two to kind of go over the last month or so of work that we've done. But unfortunately, a lot of that footage got lost, and I gotta figure out how I'm gonna get over that, and whether I need to recreate stuff or kind of just step through the process of some of the changes that we made, some of which are pretty big, as to how we're going to finish this build. So if you haven't already, go back and check out some of the old videos. You can kind of see the progression of how we got from the interior of this car, the way it was when we bought it, to where it is now, going from the old, dirty, worn out tan interior to the brand new black interior that we have now. And it really is quite the transformation every time I drive this car, which I've started driving it more, maybe once a week or so, and it really is much more comfortable. Like I said, the heated seats work, so there's definitely some creature comforts now, despite being a Miata and being very small and not coming with a lot of those features from the factory. So it's really been a cool build. Go back and check those out if you haven't already, and definitely stay tuned because there's going to be another video coming. I just don't know what that looks like yet, since I lost probably 80% of the footage that I was planning on using. So that pretty much wraps it up with this vehicle. Once we finish the interior, we're definitely going to move into the exterior and some of the more performance-oriented mods that I would like to make, though I will seek my wife's approval before doing any of that. So let's go ahead and move on to another vehicle and keep this video rolling. Alright guys, quick update on the hatchback. The hatchback, as you see it, has not really changed much. We still wrapping up the engine bay. The front suspension is pretty much done. The rear suspension still needs work, and as you can see, the interior is still completely apart. The good thing is I have jumped back into the engine build, so the bottom end of the engine has been completed. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what footage I have still compared to the footage that I lost with the memory card, as I mentioned earlier, but it is there, and we are making progress. And unfortunately, this car has gone from the #1 priority to not the #1 priority. I would say it's probably #2 right now. I've kind of put the Miata at the top of the list because it's so close to being finished that it's the one that makes the most sense to be like, it's almost there. And not finished in the sense of the car, but at least in the sense of like, we wanted to finish the interior for so long, and we're getting so close finally that we can like maybe get it done. So that's become the #1 priority, with the Civic being a close second. I do want to get the Civic to the point where it can run and drive. That of course requires the engine being put back together, and then wiring and transmission back in the car, and then it can finally move under its own power. I don't necessarily need it to be roadworthy. I just need to be able to move it in and out of the garage, you know, around the driveway, whatever I need, under its own power. So that's really the goal for the Civic, and hopefully if I get there by the end of the year, the beginning of next year. I do have some other things following that I do want to start working on, and unfortunately we're just not there yet, but let's go ahead and check out the last couple of vehicles and get this video wrapped up. Alright guys, welcome to the elusive other side of the garage. So what we have at the house is a 2-car and a 1-car. They're next to each other. The 1-car has been housing the S2000, and basically this car has been my automotive paradise and happy place for the last probably 6 to 12 months. It's had generally no issues, maybe some little stuff here and there, your general maintenance, but no major repairs. The only issue I have been noticing is that if I let it sit for like 3 or 4 weeks, I'll have some slight depressurization of the clutch, and now it still works, but I can just tell that it's not quite there. So usually it's like top off a little bit of fluid, pump it up, you know, a little bleed if it needs it, and it's good to go. Now, I don't know if there's a leak. I haven't noticed any fluid explicitly, but I have ordered some parts, and I'm gonna go ahead and jump into that at some point, but it really just hasn't needed it eminently, especially with what I have going on with the Miata and the Civic. It really just hasn't needed it, so I haven't had to touch it. And ultimately, the only thing that I really want to get done with this car is to go ahead and wrap it. I was thinking about painting it, but I think wrapping it is really just going to be my approach. Painting it would be nice, but I think some of the spots where there already is paint need some attention as well. So I think wrapping it, at least temporary, because then I can at least kick that can down the road and make a decision as to what color I want it to be, and go into all that somewhere down the line. And for now, I can just get it back to being one color. So other than that, there's really no updates on the car. I've just been driving it a lot. You may have been noticing some of the small clips or time-lapse footage or anything like that. I got a 360 camera, so I've been experimenting with that. Other than that, no real updates with the S2000, so let's go ahead and move on to the Honda Element. Alright guys, so what you see here is a 2008 Honda Element. So this has become my daily driver, because what you don't see is the 2007 Honda Civic Si that I used to own. So that car was sold a few months ago, maybe a few weeks after my last kind of like garage update post where I introduced the new name of the channel. And I basically sat and said, I don't really know what I want to do with this car. So the biggest issue I had with the Civic Si was that it didn't do anything better than another car that I already had. It wasn't more fun to drive than the S2000. It didn't get better gas mileage than the Miata. It doesn't have more cargo room than the Element. It wasn't as reliable. It wasn't as comfortable. It was the jack of all trades, master of none, regarding the cars that I had. So I didn't really have a place for it. I always had a spot in my mind for it. I graduated in 2007, so it was built the same year I graduated, if not the year before. So when I started driving, and my first car was a 99 Honda Civic, this was like the first upper level model that came out while I was in that market, and it was always a car that I liked and wanted to get. You know, so, and a lot of people probably feel that way. Whenever you buy a car as your first car, you're like, what's the best version of this car I could get right now? And that was it at the time. I mean, probably a 2006 instead of a 2007, but same car. So I always wanted one, and now I've had one, and I guess the itch has been scratched, and I'm good to go, and I'm okay with that now. But the bottom line is I don't have that car, and my Element has really become my daily driver. Now, if you've been following along, you know that I've done some recent repairs over the last year or two to the suspension, the motor mounts. I've installed accessories, stuff like that. So there is going to still be things that I do with the car, despite driving it every day. If you watch some of those videos closely, you'll know that I did kind of go an experimentally cheap route with buying some of those parts. So part of what I'm going to do going forward is maybe start replacing some of those parts with more known, reliable versions of those parts, and really kind of qualify like what the difference in quality is between those parts. You know, can you buy a coilover on Amazon for half the price of what you get it at AutoZone, and it's better than half as good? And I assume it is, you know, but is it 60%, 80%, 90%? Like, you know, if I can spend half as much money and get something that's 80 or 90% as good, and it's going to last just as long or whatever, like I really think that's the way to go. So that's something I'm going to investigate as I continue to drive this car. So stay tuned for that. Like I said, there's always going to be Miata and hatchback content coming, maybe at different rates, but it's always going to be coming. I really want to take this time to appreciate anybody who watched the video this far. Anybody who supports the channel, I really appreciate it. But I do also have one other major update, and that is with the departure of the Civic Si, which if you've been following social media, you probably knew that already. This is the first time I'm just saying it on YouTube, but there is another project coming. So this is not some made up project that I'm just like, oh, I'll get another like I legitimately have another project. And I don't know all the details of it yet. I don't know how it's all going to look. I've really been trying to avoid jumping into another project while I have so many projects going already. It isn't a mobile car. That's the one thing I will tell you about it. I'm not really ready to introduce it yet because there is some details that are kind of in a gray area. But I can't have two immobile projects at once. So that's really one of the big motivating factors between getting the Miata to a completion point we're happy with, so I can stop working on that for the time being. And then I can really focus on the hatchback and getting that to a point where I can at least operate the vehicle and move it in and out of the garage under its own power. And that'll get me to a point where I can accept another project that is in need of a lot of work and immobile. So then I can, I can park that in the corner of the garage where the hatchback is now. The hatchback can move to where the Miata is, and then the Miata can either live outside or take turns with the S1000 or something, but we'll figure that out as we go. I have a car cover that fits a Miata, so that's always an option as well. But the bottom line is I have something else coming. I think it's going to be a really fun, but a really in-depth and very long project. So that's going to be maybe more in-depth than the hatchback, as in-depth as the hatchback is. I just feel like this car almost needs more, as much or more than the hatchback will when it's all said and done. But at the same time, like, I'm really looking forward to it, but it is going to be a ton of work. So once again, thank you to anybody who watched this far. Really, if you support the channel, I really appreciate it. Go back and check out some of the old videos. Other than that, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one.